I don't know about y'all. We are in that mode at the Loveless house. We are absolutely running 90 to nothing, right? How many of you can identify with that right now? Yeah. Especially those of you that have kids back in school. It's just kind of one thing after another. This morning, I like to start these times together with a question a lot of the time. And I want to take a quick little survey. I don't want you to answer out loud. I won't ask you to raise your hand. Nothing like that. But I want you to put yourself this morning in one of two categories in your mind and heart, okay? I want you to just answer this question as honestly as you can, all right? Right here on this last Sunday in August, starting a brand new week, a whole lot of us, our kids are starting school, we're getting back into the routine. The question I want to ask you this morning is, does your current life feel more like a blessing to enjoy or a burden to endure? Okay, honestly, just honestly, like lie detector cuff is on. Okay, does your life going into this week feel more like a blessing to enjoy or a burden to endure? Now listen, if your first response to that question was a sigh, right? I guess it's a blessing to enjoy. You are in the burden to endure column. Okay? And we're not going to make fun of you. We're not going to give you a hard time. Thank you for your honesty wherever you are. And let me tell you why I asked that question. I came across a book that's been in my library for some time that I got an awful lot out of some years ago. This is sort of a more obscure author, but his name is Jerry Pipes. He wrote a book called Building a Successful Family. And let me see if this resonates with some of you today. It has been 12 days since Mom, Dad, Eric, Janie, and Melissa Morgan had a meal together. No, Dad's not out of town, and no one is angry. They did not plan it this way, but they figure that's just the way life is today. You see, Eric's bus leaves for high school at 7:05 a.m. Janie leaves for middle school at 7:40. Mom takes Melissa to elementary school at 8:45. Then she's off to work. She works 3/4 time so she can be with the children. In reality, the only time she's with the children is in the van. She feels more like a taxi driver sometimes than a mom. Janie, one of the top acrobatic and jazz dancers in her troupe, has advanced dance class after school on Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday until 6 p.m. with an occasional Saturday morning rehearsal thrown in. Eric's high school basketball team, off to a 2-7 start, is practicing overtime every day after school, except on days when there are games. Melissa wants to be a dancer like Janie, so she practices with a beginner group as soon as Janie's class is over. Monday night is basketball practice. Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday night is dance. Almost every Friday or Saturday night, at least one of the children is spending the night with a friend. And Saturday is lawn day, basketball game day, dance performance day. The list is endless. Mom is taking a computer course on Tuesday evenings. Some of Dad's clients insist on dinner meetings. There seem to be 2 or 3 per week. Stretched, stressed, and losing touch with each other, this family is easy to find. They live in your neighborhood, on your block, maybe in your house. American Family Association research shows only 34% of American families eat one meal together each day. The average father spends only 8 to 10 minutes a day with the children, including television and meals. Only 12% of America's families pray together, and the average couple spends only 4 minutes. Average couple spends only 4 minutes of uninterrupted time together per day. And then the author asks this. He said, is there anything wrong with the above family's activities? The children's athletic activities are healthy, aren't they? They teach discipline, commitment, and how to win and lose. Dad has to do business, doesn't he? And Mom, after shuttling the children to and from school and looking after them all these years, has the right to take a class so she can refine her own interests, doesn't she? And thank you for listening. Long quotation, but let me finish this way. The truth is, there's nothing wrong with any particular element of the above family schedule. But collectively, They add up to a family who knows what each other does, but does not know each other. They are a mom and dad who provide physically, but do not make the time to provide emotionally. Each of the above family members is searching for significance. Eric through basketball, Janie through dance, Melissa through trying to be like Janie, mom through serving and caring for her kids, dad through providing financially. But in the midst of it all, they have lost the significance of what they were designed to be, primarily a family. I don't know about y'all, particularly those of you that are raising kids, but man, that resonated with me. Because especially now with 1 in 9th and 1 in 6th, the activity list, the just sheer pressure of trying to make it all happen and get it all done, and the church stuff and the work stuff, and right, I feel that. You may be here today and you feel that. And listen, this may not be your life setting, but it may be your life setting. And the truth is, life may feel like more of a burden to be endured today than what God designed it to be, a blessing to be enjoyed. Now, some of you are already like shifting in your seats, like, all right, here we go. I get to add one more guilty thing to my schedule. That's fantastic. Right? It's not like I don't feel bad enough already. Like now I get my Sunday or my weekend like he's going to completely do a drive-by guilting on me now. You like that phrase, don't you? Isn't that nice, Jeanette? Drive-by guilting. I stole that. I like it a lot. I like it a lot. It works. Let me just tell you, I have no intention of doing that today. Okay? What I do want to do is bring you a message and 3 biblical principles. Okay? In the middle of the fight, in the middle of the war, in the middle of a culture that is crazy, in the middle of all the technology, in the middle of wanting to make sure our kids are well adjusted, in the middle of also wanting to be good Jesus followers and turn out kids that are Jesus followers. I want to give you 3 biblical principles to help you get from one column back into the other, to help us get from burdened to blessed. If you have your Bible this morning, turn to Psalm, the book of Psalms, number 127. Psalm 127. This is Israel's songbook. Okay? And very often they would put this amazing, life-changing, practical truth in the form of a song. And they realized there was something about that kind of helped get it into your heart, helped get it into your head, maybe more than just words, to put it to a melody, to put it to a song. And so this song is fascinating because it is written by who God called the wisest man who ever lived. This individual's name was Solomon, and this is his song. And we find some principles in this that help us get from burdened to blessed. How many of you glad you came today? Say amen. All right. Verse 1. Unless the Lord builds the house, those who build it labor in vain. Unless the Lord watches over the city, the watchman stays awake in vain. Vain means empty. It is in vain, it is empty that you rise up early and go late to rest, eating the bread of anxious toil. For he gives to his beloved sleep. Behold, children are a heritage from the Lord, the fruit of the womb, a reward. Like arrows in the hands of a warrior are the children of one's youth. Blessed, 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 happy is the man who fills his quiver with them, these children, these arrows. He shall not be put to shame when he speaks with his enemies in the gate. 3 principles in this passage that are profound, but they're simple, they're applicable, they can change your life immediately if you leverage them. Okay? The beautiful thing about a principle is you can leverage it. You can use its power to bless your current life. You can also ignore it, and this principle will hold true whether you believe it or embrace it or not. Principle number one that we take from our text: embrace purpose. If you want to go from burdened to blessed in this crazy culture, embrace purpose. The thing that I find when I tend to get burdened in life is when I'm going, like I said, 90 to nothing, I'm doing all those things, and somewhere along the way, maybe I'm driving down the road and I just have that nagging question like, does any of this matter? Right? Is any of this doing any good? Is this what life was meant to be? You ever have that moment you feel like we grew up like mom and dad always let us have hamsters? And we would buy those habit trails, and those suckers were like, they would stretch across the room, and like they'd crawl through those tunnels. And those hamsters always found a way to escape. They always made their way out of that habit trail, right? We had more like late night hamster hunts than I would care to tell you about. But the thing is, they loved at night to get on that little wheel, don't they? Like it's always at night when you're trying to sleep, and they're just running, right? And they're going nowhere, but they're running. We had the little ball, right, that you put them in the little plexiglass ball and seal it, and then they just run around the house, right? And that works out terribly when you realize what they do in that ball. You never use the ball again. But there's times when, and I think we tend to get burdened at whatever age when we start thinking, is this all there is? Is this really what I'm meant to be doing? Does this matter at all? And let me answer that for you from the text. If you're asking the question, does what I'm doing matter? If God isn't in it, nope. Is what I'm doing empty if God isn't in it? Yep. The text is incredibly honest, isn't it? Psalm 127:1. Unless the Lord builds the house, your household, your career, your finances, your leisure time, your life, those who build it labor in vain. Unless the Lord watches over the city. One translation puts it like this: unless the Lord builds the house, the work of the builders is wasted. Unless the Lord watches over the city, guarding it with sentries will do no good. Here's the idea. God built us to find our purpose in Him. And anything we're doing or spending money on or spending time on or spending life on that's not tied back to that one purpose, He says in the end, it doesn't mean a thing. So the question is, how can we be sure God's in what we're doing? Well, 1 Corinthians 10:31 gives us this great life principle. Here's what it says. So whatever you eat or drink or whatever you do all to the glory of God. In eating, in drinking, in whatever you do all to the glory of God. God says you want to find purpose in what you're doing. You want to find purpose in your marriage, in your finances, in your baseball, in your football, in your dance class. Be sure that everything you're doing is tied back into the great purpose of your life. To bring glory to God. You say, Brian, well, how do I eat to the glory of God? Right? You realize I'm not trying to find life in this food. I am praising the one who gave this food to me. How do you put God in baseball? You know what? If God is a part of your kid's baseball career, I guarantee you one thing. What's going to become even more important than the baseball are the teammates and the coaches, because they are eternal. When you're using your baseball to the glory of God, you're not going to be unconcerned about the sport, but you're going to realize this is my chance to make friends This is my chance to influence people. This is my chance to bring people to church. This is my chance to point them to Jesus by how I live and what I do and what I say. Oh, listen, when you do business to the glory of God, it's going to change the way you do business. It's going to make you more people conscious, more ethics conscious than you ever would have been before. Christopher Wren was the designer of the beautiful, magnificent St. Paul's Cathedral in London. And Christopher Wren tells the story about when St. Paul's was being constructed. He actually, people didn't even know who he was. He came along and was watching the workers do their work and their labors. And there were guys like we often see just kind of dragging along, just moving the bricks, moving the wheelbarrow, just trying to get off, just trying to make it Saturday so they could do what really mattered. And he asked them, he said, what are you doing? What's going on right now with you? And they would say, I'm carrying stones. Well, look at me. I got a wheelbarrow full of bricks. But Wren would later write, there was one guy that just seemed, he was singing while he worked. He was enthusiastic. He was doing his work with a special spring in his step. And Christopher Wren asked this guy, what are you doing? He said, I'm building a magnificent cathedral. Whole different deal when you do what you do for the glory of God. Listen, don't ask football to give you what football can't produce. It'll never give you life. Don't ask a hobby. Don't ask a bank account. Don't ask a profession to give you what it can't give you, which is life. Only God gives life. And He can communicate life even through those things to you and through you. But you got to make sure you do it to the glory of God. For those of you maybe that aren't raising kids, but you're in the middle of your career, listen to this. Colossians 3:22. Slaves, obey your earthly masters. Right? That sounds terrible, right? Some of you are like, that's me, right? Back in that day, this is referring to bond servants. When it says slaves, don't think colonial American slavery. Think bond service. These were people that were working off a debt, more like today's employees. Okay? So let me say it this way. Workers, obey your earthly bosses in everything you do. What? Try to please them all the time, not just when they're watching you. Serve them sincerely because of your reverent fear of the Lord. Work willingly at whatever you do as though you were working for the Lord rather than for people. Remember that the Lord will give you an inheritance as your reward, and that the boss you are serving is Christ. Woo. Tell me that wouldn't change the way you wake up in the morning. Tell me that wouldn't change the way teachers, you teach that class. Tell me that wouldn't change the way students, you go about your studies. Listen, I'm not trying to get A's for my teacher or just for a good education. I'm getting A's for Jesus because He's the one my life is centered on. How do you go from burdened to blessed? Put God in what you're doing. Principle number 1 is very simply embrace purpose. Principle number 2, everybody still with me now? Say amen. Principle number 2, listen. I wish I could come down and get you all by the shoulders and look you right in the eyes. Not only embrace purpose, prioritize rest. Prioritize rest. Dave Henderson, in his book Culture Shift, writes this: our lives, like our daytimers, are busy, 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 full of things to do and places to go and people to see. Many of us convinced that the opposite of an empty life is a full schedule. Hang on a minute. Many of us convinced that the opposite of an empty life is a full schedule. Remain content to press on. I would imagine that since the beginning of time, we human beings have been believers in the saving power of more. Right? If I could just have more money, if I could just have more success, if I could just have more muscle mass, if I could just have more sex appeal, if I could just have more clothing, if I could just have more success with my grades, if I could just have more athletic ability, if I could just, let's make it spiritual, if I could just have more spirituality, if I could just have more gift, if I could just have more, I wouldn't have to feel so restless. You know what I'm talking about? That feeling when you get in the car, the thing that makes you turn the radio on immediately because it's so uncomfortable. Not all of you have that, but a lot of us have that. You can't sit for 5 minutes in silence because all this stuff starts bubbling up and you don't like it. That restless feeling, right? That out of joint feeling, like I'm missing something. I should be doing something. And the fact is, we've bought into this saving power of more. More for my kids, more for my mate, more. We even do it in church, right? I'm going to do more and more and more and more. I'm going to take on more. Right? But here's what the text says. Psalm 127:2. Look at this. It is in vain that you rise up early and go late to rest, eating the bread of anxious toil. God says, it's not a good thing. For God gives, this verse has brought me to tears sometimes. For God gives to his beloved, that's you, sleep. More isn't always more. More isn't always more. There's this principle we find in Scripture. There's this concept called the Sabbath. You know what Sabbath actually means? It means to cease, to desist, to rest. This idea of a Sabbath was instituted by God himself when for 6 days he was speaking the universe into existence. And on the seventh day, God rested. He took a Sabbath. Was God tired? No. He was saying there's something so critical, so elemental in this concept of rest that I'm going to do it to show you how desperately you need to do it. When God chose his people, the Jews, and he put them into the promised land, and he took Moses to Mount Sinai, he said, listen, you have to take a Sabbath from sunset to sunset on a particular day. I want you to rest. Don't do any work. Don't do any labor. I want time with you and your family. I want time with you and your family and me. God says, you keep my Sabbath or I'll kill you. He was that serious about it. He knew that without rest, everything breaks down. God even gave this Sabbath principle to the land. God said, with the land, for 7 years you work it, you till it, you produce it, but on the seventh year, you give that land an entire year to rest. You don't farm it at all, you let it replenish itself. Now, we're not under the law, right? We Christians. But there's a principle. You've got to take time for you and your family to rest. There's some amazing writings on the Sabbath when it came to the Jews. They would have oftentimes what they called a Sabbath box on their porch. And literally, when they came in to prepare for the Sabbath, they would have all these things that they would open the Sabbath box, and the things that preoccupied them, all the things that made them busy. For us, it would be our cell phone. For us, it would be like work we had to take home. For us, whatever. They would open up that box, they would put it in the box, they would shut it, and they wouldn't pick it up for 24 hours. There's a principle. There's a principle. Some of our misery and burden in life is that we've got the accelerator to the floor, and the ancient Greeks used to have a saying, you will break the bow if you keep it always bent. How long has it been? husbands and wives, since you actually had a date with no kids, no cell phones, no interruptions, no responsibility. Well, we don't have a lot of money right now, but you don't need a lot of money for that. How long has it been? Let me go you one more. How long has it been since you scheduled in? I talked to a preacher last week, and there's an issue with him. His wife is struggling with the fact that she almost feels like he's got a mistress, like the church is his mistress, because he says, I'm going to be home at such and such time, and then he's home 3 hours later. And she's like, you always put it before me. You always put it before me. And he says, what do I do? People are talking to me. People are asking me things. People need me. Like, how do I just stop it and say, I got to go? Some of you feel like that. Like, I can't get off the roller coaster. What am I going to give up? You know what I told him? I said, if you had an appointment with me and you were with somebody at 4:30, you'd tell them, you know what, at 5 o'clock I got an appointment I cannot miss. I said, how dare you put me before your wife? Why don't you tell them I got an appointment that I can't miss, and you go home to that wife and babies and treasure them? How long has it been since you have had 8 consecutive hours, just you and the family? No interruptions, no practices, no responsibilities. 8 hours to play games or nap or watch a movie. 8 hours with all of you in the same room. I'm not guilting you. I'm saying for all of us, if we don't make that a priority, if we don't say, I got an appointment on Friday night with my family, it won't happen. And friend, when it does happen, it's so much easier to go from the burden column to the blessed column when you start practicing this principle God gave us. Let me give you one last thought. Principles on how to go from burden to bliss. Embrace purpose. Everything I do is tied back to God. Prioritize rest. You've got to make a space for it. Honor the space and watch what God will do. Here's the third one. This is a little counterintuitive. This is pretty new for me. Principle number 3, abandon balance. Abandon balance. Our text says in Psalm 127:1, okay, look with me to verse 2. It is in vain that you rise up early and go late to rest, eating the bread of anxious toil, for he gives his beloved sleep. Behold, children are a heritage from the Lord. It's almost like, does Solomon have like a little bit of ADD? He's talking about us, he's talking about our work life, and then he's like, by the way, children, like squirrel, right? He just like leaves the topic altogether. How many of you still with me now? Say amen. He's not leaving the topic, he's right on the topic. Children are a heritage, a gift from the Lord. The fruit of the womb, that makes me laugh every time, a reward, because I'm childish. Like arrows in the hand of a warrior are the children of one's youth. Blessed is the man who fills his quiver with them. You know what? When you get older, nobody's all that concerned about how much money I made, how many deals I made, how much everybody likes me, but you know what you're real concerned about is your family. Some of you that are retired, you've told me. I've had old preachers tell me forever, I wish I'd have spent more time with them. I wish I'd have poured more into my kids. I wish I'd have poured more into my marriage. I got preoccupied, right? Children are a heritage of the Lord. Like arrows in the hands of a warrior are the children of one's youth. Blessed is the man who fills his quiver with them. He shall not be put to shame when he speaks with his enemies in the gate. I think what this means, for years I've struggled with balance. Like a lot of you, I feel like that bit the juggler does where he's juggling the pins and he drops a pin, and when he goes down to pick that pin up, another one falls. Like I always feel like that. Like if I'm really working on my finances and my diet, then I'm not spending enough time with the kids. And I'm spending time with the kids and the family, like this one hits the ground. And it's always been this like burden of like, how do I get balance? You know what I'm starting to believe? Give up on balance. You're never going to have every area of your life on equal footing. And you don't even need to. I think for a lot of us, we're like, I'm gifted here and here, but I'm not very gifted here and here. I got to bring these areas up. No, you don't. Pour more into the areas in which you're gifted. Here's the idea. I don't want to be I don't want to be mediocre at a ton of stuff. I want to be passionate about the things that matter. Why don't we finally give up on balance? Don't try to be balanced. Put first things first. It's no coincidence that Solomon is like talking about what matters in life, and then he says, by the way, kids are a blessing, not a burden. Now, there are periods of your life where you feel like they're a burden. Right? Those terrible twos are called terrible for a reason. Some of them are making that transition into teenage years, and there's times where it's like, right? Sometimes you have to tell yourself, they're a blessing, they're a blessing. But they really are. Stephen Covey, in his book, First Things First, I like that title, described a story that one of his associates had experienced in a seminar. I've told this a lot of times. It's so good. Bear with me. Professor, class full of people, stands or gets behind a counter with a receptacle, and he has a number of large rocks on the table. He fills this receptacle completely full of rocks to the top. He asks the class, okay, is this completely full, or can I get something else in? There's still rocks on the table. They say, no, it's completely full. He reaches under the counter and gets a container full of smaller rocks, and he pours them in all the way to the top. Okay, is this container full, or can I get more in? And now they know what he's doing. They say, you can get more in. He said, you're right. He gets a thing of sand, and he pours it in full to the top. Then he gets a thing of water, and he pulls it in full to the top. And then he says, okay, what's the lesson in this? Guy raised his hand. He said, the lesson is there's always room for one more thing. And the professor said, nah, that's not it. The lesson is if you're going to get the big rocks in, you've got to get them in first. If you're going to get the big rocks in, you got to get them in first. Here's the thing. We get caught with this thing of like, well, what do I give up? I mean, Brian, what are you telling me to give up? You're telling me to pull my kids out of a sport when they're passionate about that? You're telling me to give up this time with work? No. I'm not telling you to give up anything. I'm telling you, there are some big rocks in your life. If you're going to get them in, you better get them in first. God says they have everything to do with your relationship with Him, your kids' relationship with Him, and your relationship with people. Can I just say time with your family? Time, not quality time. That's garbage. I spent 20 minutes with them, but it was quality time. No. Time is time. Quality time, I just said it, time with your family. Quality time is garbage. Quality time, right? Time with your family is a big rock. If you don't get it in first, it won't happen. And pretty soon, man, parents, isn't this the truth? Like I never in a million years expected this to go so fast. Right? Aubrey was a little bitty gray baby. I don't know why she was gray. She's weird. She's still weird. A little gray baby, and now, freshman in high school, like that. Graduated soon, like that. Time with your kids, without cell phones, without every week is a big rock. Listen to me. Time in the house of God, and time with them in that youth department, and time with them in Kid City is a big rock. It is. If you're going to get the big rocks in, you got to get them in first. Give up on balance and prioritize the things that matter. Oprah Winfrey was once asked why she never had kids. Why'd you never have kids? You know what her reply was? She said, because you can't have it all. Wow. She knew if she was going to have what she has, she couldn't have that too without messing it all up. You can't have it all. So you got to get the big rocks in first. I want to close with this. From burdened to blessed. If you could write the script for your dream family, I'm talking the outcome is your dream. Okay? I'm betting this, okay? It might be that they go to an amazing college and get a great career. That's a good dream. It might be they play professional sports. That's a good dream, especially if they've got some skill, right? There are all sorts of good dreams like that, but I promise you this, part of your dream is, I want them to be Christians that love Jesus, right? Part of your dream is, I want to have a relationship with them. I know of a couple right now who their son is a professional football player at the highest level. He is currently playing in the NFL at the highest level. I won't say position because you'll start doing the math. But him and his parents, they put a lot of time into football, but not as much time into him. And I believe now with all the millions and all the notoriety, if they could go back and say, we could have a relationship like we want with our son and his wife and their babies, they'd trade all the glitz and glamour of that football team. I'm not saying that's bad, that's fine. But I'll bet your dream includes a great relationship with your kids, a great, thriving, passionate marriage, right? And a family that loves Jesus. You say, I don't know how to do that. What if this week, okay? Because a dream is only as good as the plan to get there. What if this week, prayerfully, you said, we are going to start scheduling in family time where we turn off our cell phones. We leave them in that little Sabbath box if you need to. And we're going to have time, just us together. What if you tried that this week? You might not get it perfect. You might not get it exactly right. But what if you took that next step? What if, right, you sat down with your mate and determined these are the big rocks. These are the things we've got to have with our kids spiritually. These are the things that if we don't have this, we got nothing. And got down and said, God, we're asking you to help us put in the time to make this thing happen. What if you took just that next step? No guilt, no, right, just that next little step. What kind of profound impact could that have?